How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you guys?
We're doing good. So let me ask you a question. How tough is Martinsville for you to pick?
Well, it got a lot tougher 2 days after the Auto Club race.
Yeah.
Took one of my top picks away.
That's what I was thinking.
It's fairly straightforward, and with the new cars, the durability of the new cars, the beating and banging shouldn't have too much of a toll. So I think we're looking at the same cast of characters to rise to the front, and the interesting picks are going to be in B and C.
Yeah, it's when you take Denny Hamlin out of the mix on a flat track, you're taking somebody that's. I mean, he would probably be the pick on what do you think, 50% or 70% of the Yahoo games for the A driver?
Probably up there, at least 60. At least 60%. A good 2/3, I think, usually have him on their provisional roster, and most of them have gotten the message. It looks like right now only about 10% of the Yahoo players have him listed on their roster. So, got to make sure the word gets out there and that he's not racing, and what that means. But we've got Richmond coming up during this period as well.
Right.
That's going to be a place where you'd absolutely want to start him. He should be back unless something's really wrong that we don't know about by Pocono. And he's just as good on the longer flat tracks, Pocono and Indy, as he is on the short flat track. So if you were planning on starting him 9 times on flat tracks, you still have plenty of opportunities.
Dan, Charlie and I were talking earlier about Mark Martin being his replacement, and to our recollection, we don't remember Mark Martin being any good at Martinsville. Are we all wet, or can you corroborate that?
No, Mark was pretty darn good with Hendrick Motorsports, but he was uneven. In the 6 races he ran for Hendrick Motorsports, he had 4 top 10s and finished runner-up to Hamlin back in fall of 2010. So he's had some good runs there. I don't think he's as good a pick as Brian Vickers is in his car, mostly because they haven't had a chance to gel. Although on the short tracks that he did run last year and the short flat tracks that he did run last year, Martin also had a particularly good season. So he'd be a good dark horse, but there are probably enough opportunities to start him later in the season that you don't feel like you have to start him this week.
Well, before I ask you for your Yahoo predictions and your pick for the winner this week, I want to make my prediction for this week. And I know I'm 100%. I'm 100% going to be right on this. Mark Martin is going to be so thankful and have so much fun and going to love that car so much.
It's going to be the best car
he's ever been in, and he just can't. He doesn't believe how lucky he is, and that's it. Okay, Dan. So who's your picks?
You got to like Mark's attitude.
You do.
He enjoys doing what he's doing.
He does.
In A, I think you take Hamlin out of the mix, you don't lose all that much unless you're planning on spreading out your Johnson picks a little bit differently than this.
I try to never spread out my Johnson.
Yeah, you have the hitch in my delivery there.
That's all right. Let us be the crude ones, Dan.
Sorry.
Anyhow, Johnson's always a good pick at Martinsville. Gordon has been uneven everywhere he's been this year, but he tends to rise to the challenge at Martinsville as well. So if you don't want to start Johnson, I think this is a good chance to go ahead and give Gordon a start. And he should be threatening for a top 5. He was running strong at Bristol, even though some of that was pit strategy before he cut the tire and slapped the wall. I think Gordon's good for a top 5, and if you want to save the Johnson pick, you'll start Gordon instead. Down in Group B, I think that as long as Earnhardt's got the hot hand, you want to run with him. He's got the points lead, and he got it because he's swept the top 10, and he's got the top 10 at the end of last season. So he's got a ton of momentum on his side. He's a streaky driver. There's no guarantee that he's going to keep it up. So I would start Earnhardt one more time And if you run out of him before you get to the fall Talladega race, you know, he wrecked last week because someone was blocking. I don't remember who it was. I don't think it was Dono. Brian Vickers, I think, wouldn't necessarily be my number 2 pick if it hadn't been for the 8th place finish that he got at Bristol. He's in B, not as good, not as slam dunk a pick as he was down in C. But Vickers is another one of those guys, and Kyle Busch, I think, is Joe Gibbs Racing is good on this track. Busch has momentum on his side, and he continues to be a top guy. If you really want a dark horse, though, in B, with the caveat that anybody who's followed me throughout the years knows my oeuvre, realizes that every time I pick Kurt Busch to do anything, he wrecks. But back-to-back top 5s, 3 top 10s at the end of last season. Maybe he's finally got his head pointed in the right direction, keep the car pointed that way too. And Kurt Busch would make a good dark horse pick for all those people that, because there are going to be a lot of people who still think that he just can't do it, that he's just going to slap the wall sometime. And of course, now that I picked him, he probably will.
Your C driver, I'm assuming, it's going to be Ricky Stenhouse, right?
No. Down in C, James Finch has scored the most points in 3 of 5 races. And last week, A.J. Allmendinger scored the second most points. Regan Smith is in this car at Martinsville, so start Smith. I would ride the James Finch wave as long as I could.
Really? Huh?
Especially since it's spread over 3 drivers so far and about to be 4 drivers with Brian Truex picking up the getting behind the wheel at Richmond. If he's not one of the top 2 or 3 picks, I'd be surprised. So I would use Smith. I'd use James Finch every time I had the opportunity. And then when I don't, or if there's a track that just really seems odd for them, go with Ricky Stenhouse Jr., possibly go with Danica Patrick somewhere later in the season. But you're going to get a lot of picks out of the number 51 because they're spreading their wealth across several drivers.
Well, and that's why you're the expert and I'm an enthusiast. He is Dan Beaver. He's the director of fantasy racing for NASCAR.com and Yahoo. Yeah, NASCAR.com. Also writes for YahooSports.com fantasy racing stuff. Regular contributor here every week on our show, and we really appreciate it. Dan, thanks a lot. Follow Dan on Twitter at Fantasy Race if you aren't already. If you aren't already, you're dumber than I am. Dan, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you next week.
I'll be here.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Dan Beaver. See, he just thinks that stuff through. I thought I was right on that
Yeah, well,
Stenhouse thing, and